Yes, and before we start, I'll also give a word to Stefan, because these sessions are organized with collaboration with the Faculty of Architecture. And yeah, Stefan, do you want to say something before we start?
Yes, well, welcome. It's great to have our third session running now. I'm happy to see UN Studio presenting today. One of the finished VRLAB-BK projects. I've only seen the last part of that project, but it was great to see this theoretical approach. At the same time, we have Milena here. I've worked together with Milena a couple of times, and it's great to see her work, how it's advancing, and well, I think it will be a great session. And I'm looking forward to the last upcoming session, which will be after Christmas in the next year, but we will announce it as soon as possible. So enjoy today, and be aware we will continue in the new year with the last session of this series.
Awesome. Great.
Yeah, so let's start.
So it started actually with a call from the TU Delft, obviously, where Bao and I were asked to come up with a proposal related to VR spaces. And after we saw the brief, we were really excited and proposed some kind of interesting approach to what a new VR space can be. I want to briefly go through the introduction, then talk about the challenge, which kind of concepts we came up with first, and afterwards which finalized kind of prototypes we made together with the Delft. As you know, VR is currently being used to represent physical space, used as a it's a game engine obviously, and it's used to display the physical space as we know it. It's also it's weird for us in a way to see how VR space is always being used to represent the real world, or kind of fictions of what the real world could be. Secondly, it's used as a design tool. We architects like to now finally, after years of drawings and only 3D models, really experience the space itself, and explore different styles and see which different kind of scenarios can work for our clients. But of course, this was not the goal of the research project. We wanted to see, is there another way how we can use game engines and virtual reality instead of just replicating the physical domain, to see which kind of new concepts can we come up with. So this famous Edge by Azure actually got us going. It has a different kind of dimensions in it, different kind of it's kind of a different world, a different story. It almost feels like unbound by the laws of physical reality. And we were aiming to see, how can we use VR in a similar way? Can we use the unique qualities of a virtual space to come up with something new, and to say, hey, can we use kind of a new kind of interaction space in which the laws of physics don't necessarily apply? So another thing was, of course, the navigational challenge. Famously or notoriously in VR, we're always confined to this little box. We have our sensors in the room, and unless you have like an omnidirectional treadmill, we are always limited to a room scale setup. Of course, now you see in the United States, you see these warehouses being pulled out of the ground where people actually wear a computer on their backpack. But still, you're still based on sensors and the data around you. So we wanted to kind of solve this navigational issue. We could kind of try to, how can we navigate through a space in which the movement is not confined to this room scale? So Bao and I, we sat down and we had multiple concepts and quite some different iterations, and we came up with the fact that, hey, what happens if you as a user, you don't move through the space and you're not confined by that space, but you let the space move around you. So we aim to make the VR user itself stationary instead of dynamic, and let the space kind of rotate around you. So what you see here is our diagram of a Rubik's Cube, for example. And on the right, that red dot would be you. And then that space would kind of, this is our first sketch, that space would then revolve around the user and then also pan and move. So in this way, the user could always remain static and shouldn't be able to move, but you could control the space around you. Instead of kind of using teleportation and treadmills, you would command the space, because you can do that in virtual reality. So you no longer are confined to your little box. And then we went into some reference projects. This is the floodwater system of Tokyo. And we went through some references to see, what does it mean if space is not designed for humans? Because this is kind of important in virtual reality, because the rules of physics, one, they don't apply. And in, for example, the Tokyo floodwater system, if the space is not designed around the human, it's designed for something else, in this way to get rid of massive amounts of water when needed. So there's different forces at work, and we want to play with these concepts. Another thing is an environment, carved out by water. Again, spatial configurations not designed by or for humans. Different forces at work yet again. Of course, we've seen the same in pop culture, Inception, laws of physics are different while the characters are in the dream. Another famous movie, The Cube. It's kind of a cult horror movie where inhabitants get kidnapped, put into a labyrinth, and then the labyrinth is ever changing. So we took those references and started our own geometrical explorations. And first we started to see, hey, what if we would create a folding isosurface in which the user can traverse? So we created kind of a script where different kind of points in space were made and then subsequently connected with kind of a folding isosurface. In this way, you would kind of get a non-directional fluid space in which you could kind of control how that space would revolve around you. So here you see a section. Again, very non-directional. We want to play with this concept of not having a ground plane and then walls, but really having a space that would feel like it's not a mere representation of the physical domain. A second approach we took was a procedural network. And what we did here is, what if you would create the same labyrinth, but you would make it procedural. So based on the user's inputs, those spaces would kind of change. And here you can see an example. So the line you see in Rhino is the point to which the user would traverse. And depending on the nodes, it could branch out in 2, or in 3, and 4, and 6 different ways. So in this way, this whole space could morph based on the inputs of the users, and it could kind of give you different directions based in time. And in this way, the space itself would not even be static. Again, so here you see a screenshot of how that space is captured inside. And again, that space is the user remains static here. And actually what the user would do is it would kind of pull along those lines, and that space would then come towards him or her. And also it could rotate. So if you would go to the right, you would not teleport there, but no, you would say, hey, I'm going to rotate the space, and then I would pull the space towards me. So in that way, you can remain static as a user, but that whole space, and it can become, of course, infinitely big because it's a VR space. But that whole space then could react to the commands of the user. The third concept, my colleague Bao will take over.
Yeah, I think you might as well, keep sharing the screen, and I'll just ask you to move towards the next slide.
Definitely.
Yeah, while the first explorations that Bart just explained were more generative in nature, this last let's say exploration has a more geometric point of departure. Well, the generative nature of the first explorations also meant that the geometry was quite a high resolution mesh, which made it a little bit more difficult to apply further articulations on, or to edit it. And the driver to work with this more geometric approach was mainly the ability to apply surface articulations. So the reasoning behind it is that we're creating this, you know, like quite complex geometry, and we were intrigued by how to sort of apply surface articulations to inform a type of navigational quality. So this one, what you're seeing on the screen right now, we are working with some, let's say, a pinching quality, where these edge loops that continue throughout the whole geometry can maybe inform, you know, a certain directionality. Next slide, Bart. So the big advantage of this geometric approach is that that the geometry looks really, you know, intricate, but if you scale it down to its first low polygonal setup, is that it fits neatly into a cube, and this cube we can stack and rotate, and then create a more intricate geometry. And also what you see here is that these edges, these edge loops, continue throughout the whole geometry. Next slide, please. So this is actually an adaptation of that geometry that you just saw. So the geometry you just saw was trying to articulate the surface through these edge loops, and this one is actually trying to give you a sense of where you are by deformation. So we applied a deformer to the sphere, and towards the center the deformation is the most extreme, and it sort of relaxes towards the parameter. So by sort of, you know, like if while you're moving through that space, and when you see like, okay, so now the geometry loosens up, that you know, okay, so I'm more towards the perimeter of the geometry, sort of trying to yeah, to also make you not get lost in space completely. Next slide, please. This is an interior shot, so yeah, you can see it can be quite overwhelming, let's say, moving through this space. Next slide. This is also another way to articulate the surface, where we came up with a sort of a subdivision strategy, where towards the higher curvatures we're subdividing the geometry yeah, more. And we're also utilizing the, let's say, the creases to potentially put light leaks in it, and shadow gaps. Next slide. It's an interior shot of that. And then also next slide. And the third way to articulate the surface was actually done by the Delft team, Frank, Arno, and Luke, who's also on the call. And you know, it was really a nice collaboration with the Delft team. And the guys came up with textural qualities, which really made yeah, the space feel more articulate. And yeah, next slide, Bart. I think maybe it's the last slide where we can see I think it's next one also. Yeah, these are more shots, and then I think it's the last slide. So I think next one is the last. Oh, one more then, sorry.
Yeah, there's a couple of them.
Yeah. Yeah, this one is the one I'm referring to. So so here they made this sort of GUI where you could change the texture, the colors, and yeah, we went through a couple of iterations, and it's such a shame that like in the final, let's say, stage of the project, we were in Corona times, so it was difficult to really get together. But we made such huge leaps with the team in Delft. So the first iterations, also moving through the space, was quite static, and in this last one, they also built in this sort of fall off while moving through the space. So the first time Bartolome put on the goggles, it really felt like as if you were like swimming through a fluid space, or swimming through through a viscous let's say fluid, or through space, because also while you were pulling the space towards you, it had this it was still moving a little bit while when you stopped. And I have to say it was I wish we could share it right now with you, but also we've got some logistical problems. We cannot enter our VR room these days anymore at the office. So it makes it a little bit awkward showing this to you by screenshots. But there must be a way in the near future where we can share this app with you.
I must say, I mean, to comment on what Bao said, it's true. The Delft team did an amazing amount of work to get our prototype working, because we supplied the geometry and they kind of coded the way that you can use actually your handheld devices, and you can just switch and you pull the space towards you. So in a weird way, it's like it feels like you're moving through, but at the same time you're static as a person, but that space kind of is rotated and morphed by your hand gestures. So in this way, the whole navigational challenge and the whole experience of virtual reality becomes different. And I think Bao and I, we both see lots of potential for this. It's very interesting to see how a VR space can not only be like a replication of what we know in the physical world, but you defy the laws of physics and you make use of everything that VR has to offer.
And I think the most beautiful thing, it sort of it really defied your senses. So Bartolome, we went a year prior to initiate or starting this project. We went to a VR conference in Amsterdam. It was a 2-day conference, one day with lectures and one day, where in Amsterdam North we could experience a lot of these VR experiences. And still, how beautiful they were, there was always this navigational awkwardness. And by conceptually challenging this, I think we got rid of that awkwardness, and and really sort of heightened the senses while being in this VR simulation. So I think in that regard we quite succeeded in what we were aiming at with the TU Delft team.
I see our time is up, Irena.
Yeah, I think we also are finished.
We're done for now.
Yeah, you're super precise, guys.
There we go.
Yeah. And I actually really like the concept, because VR, for me, it's not only about repeating the reality and showing the same that you can feel in reality, but also to allow to experience something unreal. And that's what Inception movie is about. Or I really liked the example of Escher's works, where you can actually see the space in a different way. So we'll have 10 minutes for questions. Also, feel free, guys, to write your questions in the chat when you have them. And if you have any questions, just unmute yourself and start talking.
Well, maybe I can ask a question, because it's been a while since we've seen somebody from the TU Delft team, actually. So because I saw Lucas also on the call. So I want to ask him how it was for him to work on this project.
Yeah, it was really unique actually. It's because it's so much more fundamental, and what you said, coming over those navigational issues and trying to find solutions for that. It was really different compared to the work that we're doing currently and the other projects that we've done, and it actually inspired us as well to kind of do it this kind of way. And now in other projects we can we can reflect back on what we've learned from this process and then apply it if it's possible to apply, because it's still very fundamental. But definitely inspired us as well, and it was nice to really go into the experimental side of VR.
Yeah, really nice to hear that.
And guys, if you have any questions, just feel free to ask. So my question is actually about the motion sickness in this type of experiences. And that's a very frequent question for any kind of VR experiences. But in your case, I think it has even more sense, because you make people control the environment around them and pull the space towards them instead of going forwards. So how do people actually experience it, and are there any challenges with that?
I mean, we had a couple tests also with colleagues from the office, and we also had, you know, the same question from the get-go. It's like we were like, okay, what's going to happen if that space morphs and rotates and revolves around you? But we were actually surprised by how little motion sickness we had. We expected like way more. Because it's, you know, it still feels like you're moving through space even though you control the space around you. So the motion sickness, at least for me and for my colleagues, I mean, we experienced way less than we expected.
Yeah, I also expected to to come out of this experience puking because at this conference that we did, I did some, you know, like race car games, and this I couldn't take like more than a minute of it because I already got nauseous. Yeah. But somehow, because you're in control of of your movement, and also I think this because it was not a very let's say abrupt movement because of the fall off that was built in, as if, you know, you're swimming, really made it really relaxing to move through that space. That was for me also the biggest surprise. Yeah. It really felt also almost meditative. Yeah. It was yeah.
Yeah, I think what Bas is completely true. It's like the fact that the Delft team built in kind of a delay in your motions. So it's not like a teleportation, you point, you click, and you're there, you know, and that's like, whoa, then you transport. But now it's you make a gesture, and then it has a little bit of a delay. It's like I call it like you're swimming in almost like in gelatin, you know, it's like very, very slow movements. And that really helped for the brain, I guess, to say, you know, it's not instant and you don't have to readjust. It's not like a fast and a twitched movement. No, it's very generous and relaxed. So yeah.
If I may pose a question, so you focused a lot about the movement itself. So you pose the user, or let's say the one in the VR as a point, and the world is moving around him. And
yes,
as a positive outcome is definitely that you don't have this nausea and it's much more smooth. Did you also think already about the next functionalities of it? What can you do with this world? Can you, I mean, very pragmatic, do you have a menu in this saying like, go there, add this element, change this, drill a hole, you know?
No, no, we don't have a menu yet.
Okay.
For us, it was, I'm not sure how many hours we could spend on this project for next.
Yeah.
So it was kind of a short sprint in several phases. We had initially the idea to, you know, to make this application available for people who are actually, you know, like VR normally it's like you're bedridden or you're static, or you want to get rid of the confines of a sensor space.
Mm.
But we didn't explore kind of functionalities of this VR space and how this would revolve.
Okay.
Yeah, we did get a question from our colleagues about, especially the first exploration that we did, the more generative kind that Bart did. The question was like, is it possible to real-time transform the geometry? And that's something that, you know, would be completely awesome to achieve at some point. But for now, they are, let's say, you know, generated in a program such as, you know, Grasshopper or Rhino Grasshopper or Maya, whatever, and then we make a static export which is used in VR. So, you know, if you would ask me and Bart, like, what would be like another like you know, sort of breakthrough or something, or a goal or on the horizon, that would, you know, be if you could, you know, like real time change geometry with a hand gesture, you know, and not just that opening a door in VR, but really make topological changes, let's say. And that would be like something you know, really amazing to achieve. But yeah, we only had a designated amount of time, and but it's something nice to dream about. I suppose.
I think it's a good question, because yeah, as Paul was saying, yeah, we would like to see, like in the video games, like the new Control, for example, that you say, hey, you're there in a specific moment and the whole thing morphs, not only rotating or coming towards you, but like it opens up another pathway, or it opens up another room, whatever. But yeah.
I think there was another question from Clarine. Yeah, just no.
You're muted.
Well, it's actually kind of because you Bart referred that the TU Delft built in a delay, because I think it has to do with the difference in speed. And preparation for, or anticipation, as you might say. Well, but that's kind of past.
Mm. Okay, great. Well, we are ready to start the second part of the session about the tools and technologies.
Okay, so I will just shortly present myself and my office, because I don't know how much do you know about it, probably not much. So my name is Milan Ivkovic, the office is called BLOK74, and what we do urban simulations and urban communications. So we see technology as a way to, let's say, communicate better urban planning and architecture. I'm going to talk a little bit about the immersive tech for public space design. And my background is architecture and urban planning. I'm specialist in public space design and public participation. And as I said, we are looking to unify people, places, and technology. So our mission, let's say, is to try to explore as much as possible technological solutions so we can involve citizens, users in urban planning. So this is a little bit, let's say, another level than architecture. It goes really about urban space. Let's say the motivation is more or less the same. We want to have users connect with designers and technology. The way we started with these experimentations projects, and mostly civic participation trajectories, we started it from the point of view of gaming. And Stefan Nikolic, who is working with me and living in Belgrade, I'm living here in Rotterdam. Stefan is a professional game designer, and I'm very happy to have him as a coder and also as the very valuable advisor how to shape interactivity, how to create a better user experience, and how to be immersive with, let's say, some kind of basic technology. What we do with tech is we are trying to make some kind of simplified replicas of urban complexities in a way to be able to involve as much as possible people, citizens, users in the planning process and a decision-making process about space. as you know, as you see on the left side, the famous SimCity, everyone knows it, everyone likes it, people like it very much. So that the process of placemaking, the process of public space, or the process of city making is something that is really attractive for people. They like to do it if it's been presented in a good and immersive way, and good and interactive way. On the right side, you see the urban planning simulations as they are. Most of them, 80% of them look like this. And, you know, they're just tailor-made for professionals like you and me, who know how to read complex technical drawings, who know how to operate complex menus and complex software. And it's exceptional tool for professionals. It's exceptional tool for decision making, but if the ambition is to involve more people and to have more broad co-design process in public space, but also in city making, then we will need to somehow adjust those tools. The way we are doing this and playing with technology, and I have to say we are not there yet with a complete VR project, but we are now laying out a base for a VR project, and I will talk about it a little bit later. The way we see the technology for, let's say, a public space design is we want to involve people, we want to manage the data and the ideas that we get as feedback from the people, and we want to understand them as professionals, to be able to translate them into urban planning. In terms of involving, we started with very simple analog tools. I think all of you know that making the 3D models is something that it's extremely engaging. And as we saw in also in a previous presentation, it's like does the process of designing, the process of experiencing space, or the process of being able to do something with the space is something that it's very engaging for people, nevertheless their background. So we kind of mastered that on an analog level. And in order to manage the data and the feedback that gets through this participatory encounters, we experimented with very simple digital tools to kind of just be able to follow what's happening through the creative process. What do people want? What are their ideas? So we created these small apps, a series of small apps for the mobile devices as a kind of help to an assistance to the traditional participatory and co-design process. Then we immediately saw like, okay, but this can be more or less a standalone project or standalone service, or you know, standalone tool. At one point you will not need anymore to have any physical encounters, or to have people really being at the table discussing and making models of a square. You could do it maybe completely digitally, and that's where we came again very close to the philosophy of games and interactions, and how to actually simplify the planning process and bring it to a level that people can understand and interact the way they like to interact in SimCity. Of course, the problem with that, or the challenge that we have, is SimCity is playful and people like to do it. They make all these kind of imaginative solutions for space, but we will need the output which is useful for the professionals to really make the city. Yeah? So people can be there as a kind of users consultation or control group, but actually the making of the physical space is still in the hands of professionals. And to be able to do it in a good way, you need quality data. On the left side, you see outputs of our apps, analytical data that we could create as an output of the ideas that people made through a playful process. And on the right side, you can see one of the screenshots of our parametric simulators that we made for students of design, to be able to let's say, be more creative and experiment with city making in general, using some of the gamification mechanics and game principles. The example on the right side, which is called the City Builder, is a web-based playful interaction. So through the time and through the years, we are moving more and more and more towards digital immersiveness. So we are still working a lot with web-based solutions, and we are still working a lot with simple and open shared technology in a way that why we are doing this is because the simpler the technology, the more users we can reach. I'm going now to give you some details on the project, which is the base for our future VR venture. So this, until now, it's been really a journey of exploring the possibilities to have more immersive technology for participatory processes. This year we started together with Veld Academy here in Rotterdam, we started the consultation process for Tarwewijk, which is a neighborhood here in Rotterdam. And we made again a kind of analog playful interaction, and at the same time we made a digital twin of that playful interaction in terms of making a simple tabletop board game about creating a square. The way people interact is you just log in. It's a web-based tabletop game. You log in, you have a certain role, you have a certain mission that you need to fill, so you are a kind of designer yourself. You choose from the program that it's being made available to you. You can customize your avatar, and then you just design your square. The model you see on the left side is made as a 3D model of that square. And we used, again, the open source 3D models of the whole city of Rotterdam to be able to very quickly, render render this environment. What we have seen is we tested it several times online, and what we've seen is that there are potentials in these kind of tools is, of course, to what do you want to achieve with this? Yeah, so like, okay, you can collect ideas from people, but still you will need to translate them to the designer. Is it something that can be educational? Yes, definitely. And that's also one of the biggest potential if we want to translate it to the virtual reality model, is that generally virtual reality has the biggest impact in trainings and education or entertainment. It's the technology of VR is still very expensive. It's very exclusive. So we were start to kind of map or make this pros and cons list. Is VR really the next step in for public participation or not? Is it really the good tool for public participation or not? Or should we just keep doing it like we are doing it now with a very simple games and simple narratives you can have web-based? So everyone who has a laptop and desktop and internet access can be part of it. And maybe we do not need the VR. So that's something that we already started at the beginning to question, do we need it or not? But we didn't want to, get too pessimistic in a way and say like, okay, VR is a very expensive technology. We will never be able to reach big masses of people. Keep it simple and keep this interaction very, very down to earth, use some gaming mechanics. What we really want to explore in the VR is something that can be useful for designers. So can we just, if it's about co-design of a square together with people. And we know that the designer or the expert or the architect is the one with all the technical skills and probably the one who owns the technology of VR. Can we just combine a kind of designer's walk through a 3D model with the input from the users in the real time? So we can get the interaction between the professional and, let's say, the users who are non-professionals, but they want to give the input to the professional in this virtual environment. Is that possible to make? We started to look into some inspirations for this, and we spent, myself not so much, but as I said, Stefan, my associate, is a gamer. He's glued to Steam and all kind of platforms. So we started to look into what would be really a good narrative to have this, let's say, model of a square in Tarwewijk, to make it fun enough, to make it good enough so people and users would plug in to give their comments, but also designer could plug in and observe this space in a new way. I don't know if you are familiar with a CityVR experience via Steam. CityVR is a possibility to walk as a giant through several cities in the United States. I think Chicago, New York, and San Francisco 3D models have been placed on the Steam platform for you to walk through those cities as a giant. So for myself, it was a great idea. Like, okay, we have 3D models. We know how they look like. We can make them very beautiful, or we can make them very simple, depending on what we want to achieve with them. But just imagine if we can have in VR the possibility to walk through these models in an exaggerated way. That's already playful enough, and that's already engaging enough and immersive enough to maybe have all kinds of users ready to give their inputs their way, in that way. So fun elements and exaggerations are more than welcome when you want to have a kind of participatory, immersive tech tool. Of course, in our first sketch for the tabletop of the Tarwewijk model and the interactivity about it, maybe you've seen it on that screenshot. We created very little, very small tokens, elements, as a way to help people express their ideas, saying like, okay, we want to have here a new bench, we want to have here a new fountain, or whatever design element of public space that we want to have. But even those elements, of course, could be made in VR. Tvori is a VR toolbox that it's been made 3 or 4 years ago. I stopped following them at some time. But what they do is they developed a piece of software. You can see it on the right side, which kind of makes this interactive toolbox of very simple design elements you can use to create your own space. So I thought, like, this is really nice, and maybe we could just imagine if we could use the tokens that we have in our game. Can we use it maybe as a 3D renderable elements in this VR environment, so people can pick them up in a way if they're giants? So you're a giant walking over the square, and there is some kind of table somewhere. You just pick up the tree you would like to have and you plant it in this 3D model. So that would be really kind of seamless, immersive way of really walking through this model. Of course, there is still the limitation of the whole technology. So we were thinking about, okay, how to deal with this. Is this a kind of when designer wears a VR set and I have 2 or 3 other users, like the 4 of us, we are in this space. I'm designer walking through it. I'm meeting you as a you know, as a kind of user. So I can ask you in virtual space to do something or express your idea. And then we can interact together in this VR mode. So that's a very nice concept. It's a great idea, but it's technologically quite difficult and quite complex, because you're again limited to only the people having the headsets, to only the people having the access to this. And if our ambition is to go wide and to have open and as much as possible input from the users, really participatory design, that's a very big roadblock we need to somehow overcome. So we were also thinking about, okay, maybe that's just a question of making the interactive menus. That's why I asked you guys from UN Studio, like, do you think about those interactive menus? And we again looked at what is the VR right now for urban planning and architecture, and that's this picture on the left side, and we said, no, this is not what we want. This is something that goes straight out of Microsoft corporate imagery. It's dead boring. I mean, I can use it, I understand it. There is a lot of, you know, maneuvers, but just imagine that someone online would like to do it and has a headset and is a 16-year-old. You can't have a 16-year-old having interaction longer than 2 seconds with this on the left side. It's just too professional, too dry, too corporate, too boring. So we were thinking about, okay, what we would need in this concept is to have the integrated menus. It's again some kind of borrow we have from the games. And if you look at the right side, of course, it looks very funny. It's just a rendered fantasy image, but the way that they are integrating the menus of that game in the billboards of this virtual city, which is quite funny with the big donuts, the way they integrated the scoreboard, which can also be a menu, is quite clever, and it gives much more seamless, much more immersive interaction in the VR. So you don't need to feel this sterile, oh, I have to open the menu. Menu is already built into that environment. And still, this is the final slide, because as I said, we are just at the beginning, and right now we are looking together with Veld Academy and TBM from TU Delft. How can we make a research project together with the City of Rotterdam to make this a bit more viable and usable? What we want to do is to enable an environment which is simple enough, and but also complex enough for the designers. That's already quite a challenge. We have seen in the last year, and that's the point number 2, there is a potential, there is a need to make substitutes for physical consultations between the designers and, let's say, the users. So the potential of digital immersive tools is very big, very large. There is a big attention to this. Digital tool as a tool itself, it's actually much more better than the traditional co-design workshops. We just want to end the time of stupid post-its and crappy sketches. You can do much better and much quality thing if you're going through digital, using digital tools. There are different other purposes for it. We don't know yet what could be. We just feel that there is much more space for more sophisticated simulations if we want it. Number 5 is something that is truly interesting, and that's something that goes also into this point of integrating menus in the VR environment, or maybe it's just the extended reality environment. The possibility to include and display any other type of data is almost limitless. So it increases your process on the quality of your process of consultation in a tremendous way. If you can just have a very simple rendering of a square, I'm going back to the Tarwewijk square. You have just a simple rendering of the square. You are in that model, you see it in 3D, but you can also immediately get the data. What is this building? When it's been built? How many children is in this school building? You know, that's a completely game changer. And we would like to research a bit more into that. How do we integrate these external data in the models? Do we need VR for that? That's also a question I'm asking myself all the time. As pointed out in the previous lecture, the big plus of VR is 300 degrees of everything. You could actually be all over the space. You can be up and down. And maybe our task as immersive technology designers or let's say conceptualists is to pick up just one of those possibilities and not try to do everything at the same time. So that's what we are trying now to focus on, this giant perspective. So that's we will respect the basic physics of the horizon is the horizon, the city is a city, but we are the giants walking through there. And that's already a kind of enough craziness to build in when we are talking about the purpose of public participation, you know. A little bit of the roadblocks and a little bit of the setbacks. It's the high price of technology, of course. Complicated hardware, complicated user interfaces. It's also what we all know, the awkwardness of this stuff. It's too gimmicky. It's just not interesting enough outside of the professional designers group. It's difficult to reach a variety of users, but we are already thinking about a hybrid solution. Just think about, you are a designer in the VR with a set, and you can get the feed, the live feed or the live chat or the inputs of the users in your environment, but which is actually going web-based through a traditional websites or other channels of communication. So we have to kind of look into the combination between the VR and all other sources we can use. And that's this point number 5, to help designer listen to the users better. So we will have probably a model in VR made for the designer with some kind of external feed of users. If that external feed of users will be just, you know, chats coming in to the designer, or maybe some avatars of users walking through that model, I don't know, could be possible. I have seen some first shots and tryouts of social VR from Facebook, and I really don't like it. It's awful and terrible, but it could be combined in that way. And yeah, that was my last slide. I hope I got I gave some inspiration to you, and yeah, let's see how do we move forward from here. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Milena. I cannot agree more, especially about the gamification mechanics. I think that's a very exciting approach and very effective, because playing games is something very natural for us.
Yep.
So let's see if we have any questions. Yeah, just like before, feel free to unmute yourself, guys, and ask it aloud.
Can I have a question?
Sure, sure. Yeah.
Some reflection. So I really like your presentation, Milena. So I'm not working in the architecture field, but my work is using XR, user-centered design. So I also saw some architecture or large-scale structure design by using VR, AR, or MR. So then I think that your project actually cover different technologies that in this field, for example, that you show this building blocks with the landscape. It's quite remind me that it's truly the touchable UI, and also that you mentioned the digital twin something. Well, it's super interesting. And of course, that the demonstration that you show that you are in a giant scale, that for the collaborative work, I'm recently working with my colleague Doris on a collaborative work for factory planning. Yeah. So we also review a lot of papers and publications on this field, and we find that actually there are very interesting connections that with your cases and also the cases in like manufacturing, for example, that they show different scale of avatars. and to collaborate with each other. So I think it's very interesting and super nice.
Yeah, I mean, the possibilities are endless. You get really, sometimes you get completely overwhelmed with possibilities. And especially with us, the group of creative people, you think like, oh, this can be, this can be, this can be, oh, let's do this, let's do that, you know? But at the end, it's like you just need to find the best balance, the best solution that can serve the purpose. Let's say that's what I was saying. Like, okay, of course you can try to have the real users as avatars in the 3D model, but it will ask for everyone to be plugged in with their Googles into a kind of platform, a lot of computational power, and that's like what's the output of this? Who is going to pay for the development of this model? And is it really helping urban planners to have it like this, you know? Then maybe it's simpler to say, okay, urban planner can plug in and then gets this kind of feed of very simple information to help him walk through the, or you know, just design certain element of the city.
Yeah, exactly. That is also actually the things I'm facing, because you know that due to the COVID and also all the lockdowns, that a lot of design studios here in Netherlands, they are trying to reach out their clients virtually, but they are also worried that most of them don't have this facility, this VR facility. So, and I'm also working with them to figure out that how can we involve them in a simpler way. So I think one of my own experiences, I put just the designer in the virtual environment and maybe just synchronize my view with with the client and make maybe an interaction while maybe vocal or another particles to do the interaction and let them feel the experience from my own eyes. So yeah.
Yes. Yes, because you know, designers are also trained to navigate a very complex worlds. And if you have a very high level, high data rich, media rich environments with only, you know, designer, architect, planner can really grasp, that's okay. Let him operate in that world, but just give him also the option to hear the voice of the simple user when he clicks on a building in this complex in this complex environment, you know. That could be one of the solutions.
Yeah, well, super nice to hear your reflection on different fields. That, well, nice. Thank you.
Yeah, stay in touch. Look at our website.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, but I mean, we're moving from the next year. We will move to another project with ETH Zurich, and we will actually help them visualize the outputs of their research programs better, so the other researchers can, in an immersive way, understand what they were doing in their research. So that's our next task. We're going to do that next year.
Okay, yeah, nice.
We have a bit time for one more question. So if anyone else has a question, just the perfect time to ask it.
Shall I jump in, Irina? Milena, thanks for your presentation. Yeah, let's continue with the immersive thing. I think that's a real contribution to this field. The immersive thing with the combination of data. So you see the analog way is putting blocks you have to prepare long in advance. You're limited to the amount of the objects you have with you, the map you have with you, and you can of course adjust it in the digital form. It's unlimited in that sense in scale and number of objects, etc. Regarding the things you mentioned, especially in the discussion, the multi-platform thing is actually already standard for a couple of apps. We've seen the presentations of Hologram and Archeo in the first session, and there the multi-platform is key. I mean, you can use different types of VR headsets, but at the same time you can use a smartphone, a desktop computer, a tablet, and with everything you can just jump in and contribute to the design. Going through the skills, I don't think it's a choice between eye level, a full immersive view, 360 degree, and being a giant. I think it's the VR, but also the XR, the AR, are offering the opportunity to go through the skills from a giant to the square and back from the square and being a giant. So bird eye and eye level are you can do it in circles, you can do it in sequences, and that's also an important thing. So there's no choice to be made, and also that's something you already see in the different apps, and also when you build it in your own Unreal platform, for example. Yeah, the updates with text. Well, we've seen that in a couple of experiments. But where it is going, and there are already apps for that, is making spatial annotation. So the fact that people can use a tablet and draw something on the screen, and it will end up in your immersive world. So that is the way it should go. And maybe the talks are nice, but talks are like this, many words, and drawings explain far more. Because if you have to translate what people are telling you in the VR, it's easier if they just can use their finger. You don't even have to use the controllers anymore. You can use your fingers, you can use your hands. You draw something, you write something, or you make another annotation. You can even record it if you want to have it, and people can indeed explain it in words, but the recording's at the location. So that kind of integration is already there. So in that sense, it offers already a full package, I think, to provide the tools for collaborative design, co-design,
it's, you know, it's maybe it's just the question of also connecting what is there already. I know, for instance, if you look at the municipalities here in the Netherlands, but also other municipalities in Europe, they all have already some kind of civic communication platforms, whether it's just a simple website when they put questionnaires on it, you know, really like, you know, interaction 1.0, you know, fill in the form. But maybe it's just a question to connect those very simple existing tools with a complex VR that is for the designer, you know, because then it's that's an interesting way of, you know, actually capitalizing on what is already there in terms of data. So you don't spend too much time and energy to make, you know, the municipality website super complex immersive, because they don't have the budget, and at the end, you know, people don't use it at all, or they don't like it, they don't have time. But to try to make tools for designers which can have these simple feeds from the, you know, just simple connections to existing platforms. I think that's a very plausible scenario, especially because the technology is still quite with its let's say problems. But it doesn't mean that it cannot be used for designers.
Yeah, in that sense, making a map would already help, and making it spatial. But you already see the struggle to have a map on a web-based website with a map, and people have to start drawing in it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not a big fan. You know, there have been a lot of projects, researches about smart city in terms of people create their smart city with in Revit or whatever. I mean, who is going to draw anything in Revit if you're just a citizen? You know, it's just a way to. You can't really expect people to use highly sophisticated programs, you know.
Yeah. There are tools for that. You can use images for it, etc.
You can use images. You can use some much more simpler ways, you know, to do it.
And if you have 3D data, you can put it to the VR or the XR or the AR or whatever. If it's 3D, it's in the database. I think.
Yeah.
If it's, that sense, it's not complex, but
exactly. So it's like, yeah. You can't expect really people to know SketchUp and AutoCAD, you know.
No.
Thanks everyone, guys. It's time to end our amazing presentations. I really enjoyed both of them, and there is a lot to think about and to discuss later. If you are not part of our XR community of TU Delft, everyone is welcome there. And I left the link to the community, to the website in the chat. feel free to go there and register. We'll have bi-weekly meetings dedicated to different XR topics, whether it's architecture or gaming or research. And one of the next ones will be Valve. I think you are familiar with Half-Life Alyx. That's just a breakthrough in VR gaming. So there will be a psychologist from Valve speaking about the influence of interactions of people's psychology to game design. And that should be fantastic because he will explain how they managed to create this awesome experience. So please,
Super.
yeah, feel free to join. And again, thank you so much, Milena, Bart, Bao. That was incredibly interesting. And I hope to see you at the next sessions as well.
Yeah. If it's about gaming mechanisms, I'm in the first row, you know, I'm already applying.
Yeah.
Thank you, Lina and Stefan, for inviting me and us. And thank you for organizing this. It was really a pleasure to see this group of creative people.
Thanks, guys.
Same here.
Yeah, pleasure having you.
Have a great time.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Thank
you too. Enjoy your holidays. And yeah, Stefan, maybe you have something to say before we end.
Yeah, it was great to have this session. I think it's great to see the variety of the different sessions, and it was really inspiring again today. It was great to see the last version of the Geroid, and but also how it came to being, how it came to where it is now. I really liked the presentation, how it was introduced, and I think it gives you a good idea about what you're trying to explore. And what came out was really exciting. And so thank you very much, Bao and Bart. Milena, thank you for presenting BLOK74 with the gaming. I think it really opens new perspectives for using VR and AR. Yep. And it needs some work, but I think it will find a place there. And of course, we're happy to contribute to that, to collaborate in that. I hope you have enjoyed this session. The new sessions coming up. Irina will send them around. Enjoy your Christmas break and see you back after the break.
Fantastic, guys.
Yes, thanks.
Yes.
Bye.
Thanks
Bye-bye.
all. Bye-bye. Enjoy holidays.